Hello everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. Today we will see how we can use the social sign-on in Salesforce and the experience sites. The social login provides users an option so that they can click to log into the third-party account. The third-party account can be Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. And using the authentication providers that you set up against each of these third-party accounts in the Salesforce, you can log into the Salesforce. This mechanism is called as social sign-on. So why this social sign-on is important? What is the significance of social sign-on? How we can set up the authentication provider? Let's go in deep. So I am into my Salesforce org, and what I need to do is I need to go into the Auth Provider. And for the demo purpose, let's say we go ahead for the Google as the SSO provider, and using the Google, the Salesforce trusts the Google to provide its identity, and using that identity, Salesforce allows the end user to log into the Salesforce. The end user could be internal to the Salesforce, or they can be experience site users. First, let's see how we can use the social sign-on for the internal users. So I am going to set up an auth provider for the provider type as Google, and let's give it a name as Google SSO, and you can leave the rest as blank. Salesforce will automatically read the consumer key or secret key from the third party, that is the Google SSO, and it will create the end user's identity in the Salesforce if they are logging for the first time, or the Salesforce can update the necessary data from the third party into the Salesforce. And to continue using the auth provider for the Google SSO, we also need to provide the registration handler. This registration handler will be responsible to create the user if the user is enabling the SSO for the first time for his account, or else the details of the user can be updated if the details are updated at the identity site. The identity here is the Google. So now, as I have already created the registration handler, which is the SSO registration handler, if you do not create the registration handler before, then you have another option where you can click on this automatically create a registration handler template, and it will create the template for you. Later on, you can modify the SSO handler code block to have your own piece of code. Then also you also need to provide a user under which you need to run this SSO handler class. So I am just providing my name over here, and in the icon URL, what you can do is you can click on the below link, and since we are going to go ahead for the Google SSO, you can click on the Google icon of your own choice, copy the URL and paste it in the icon URL section and save it. So this way we have set it up for the Google. Now we need to enable this Google SSO for our internal users. So what we need to do is you need to go into the My Domain and enable the SSO under the authentication configuration section in the My Domain. If you have not enabled the My Domain, you might have to enable the My Domain first. Then you will see this section authentication configuration. Click on edit and select the checkbox next to Google SSO and save this. As your Google SSO has been saved here, and this will be available whenever you are into the login section of your instance. So the instance is inevitable yogendra-dev-ed.latin.first.com. And one more thing, let me go back to my user detail. And if you really see here, I do not have any third-party links. So let me do one thing. As I have enabled the My Domain, I have set it up my domain to have the social sign-on as well. I have already set up the auth provider. So let's log in into the instance now. So I'll quickly jump onto my incognito mode, and here I can see I have just hit the instance URL, and right now there is nothing like the SSO because I did not set it up previously. Now let me refresh this page. I must see an option of using the Google SSO. So I'll get this. So there are two ways. Either you can go ahead with the username and the password, or else you can see an option coming in to use the Google SSO. click on the Google SSO, and you will be directed to log into your Salesforce, to log into your Google account. Let me choose the Gmail account. So I am choosing my Gmail account. It asks me to go ahead with the user ID and password. I am providing them. And since my Gmail account is enabled for the two-factor authentication, so once I approve this Gmail login, I must be able to log into the Salesforce. Yeah, so I have approved this. So once I have approved this, I must be able to log into the Salesforce. So this sends me some another two-factor authentication. I need to provide the code to log into the Salesforce, verify the account, and here we go. You can see I should be able to log into the Salesforce. Now, if you really go back to my user detail, and if I refresh this page, I must be able to see a third-party account linked to my user detail. So if you see here, the third-party account which is linked is the Google, because just now I have enabled the Google SSO. So if I log out from the system, so this time it should not ask me the Gmail account details because I'm already logged in. And if I simply click on this Google SSO, it will directly take me to the home page of my Salesforce account. So yeah, this is one way where you can do the social sign-on for your internal users. Now let's see how you can enable the social sign-on for the experience sites or the external users. All that you need to do is you go to the sites. If you have not enabled your sites, firstly you need to enable. You go for the digital experiences, and under the settings you need to enable the digital experiences first to use these functionalities, and then you go to the all sites and create one community site or the experience site, and then go to the workspaces of that community site, and you need to click on the administration. Under the administration, you will see login and registration. And if you go a little bit down, you will see the select options, and just check the checkbox next to Google SSO and you are done. So you have enabled the SSO for the external users as well. Now, if you go back to the all sites again, you will see the URL. You copy this URL and paste it in the incognito mode. Okay, so if I really paste the URL in the incognito mode, I must be seeing an option of using the Google SSO here. So here again, there are two options. Either if you have the user ID and password for those community users, you can continue logging into the Salesforce experience sites using those credentials, or else you can go ahead for the Google SSO. Let me click this Google SSO and choose my another Gmail ID which is registered for the external user. So let me go ahead and use the credentials for the Gmail ID. Click on next. I should be able to log into the Salesforce using the Google SSO, and this time I have logged in into the experience site. So if you see, I have logged in into the experience site, and I have all the user details with me. If I go to the my profile, I must be able to see which user I have just created and what are all those options with the user. So if you really see, I have created this Yogendra Jangir as a user. And if I go back again to the Salesforce and search for my name, Yogendra Jangir, so you would be seeing that I must have created one portal user. So yeah, I have this portal user created with me. And here as well, the third-party account has been linked as the Google. So this confirms that the social sign-on is working for the external users as well. Whenever there is a successful message for the Google SSO, you will see a third-party account linked to this. Yeah. Let me go ahead with one more example of using the social sign-on, and this time let's go ahead with the Auth Provider as the LinkedIn, and let me create another Auth Provider for LinkedIn to use the social sign-on, and let me put it as LinkedIn SSO, and then again registration handler is the same SSO registration handler, running it with my user, which is Yogendra Jangir, as a system administrator. And the icon URL, let me put it the icon URL for the LinkedIn. Let's say I want to go ahead with the LinkedIn gray icon URL, copy the icon URL and paste it next to the icon URL in the Auth Provider and save this. Yeah, here we go. Again, what you need to do is you need to copy this instance URL and go back to the incognito mode and paste the instance URL there again. Let me log out first because I was previously logged in. So as soon I log out, I must see some other options as well. So here, if you go, and if I before that, I think I did not include under the my domain, so that's why I'm not able to see the LinkedIn Auth Provider. So what I need to do is again in under the my domain, go back to the authentication configuration and add another SSO, that is the LinkedIn SSO, and save the my domain. And this time, if you refresh your instance page, you must be seeing the another option of using the LinkedIn SSO. You click on this LinkedIn SSO and it will ask you to log into your LinkedIn account. Once you are logged into your LinkedIn account, you must be able to successfully log in again into the Salesforce. So yeah, using this SSO of LinkedIn, which is the identity provider, and Salesforce trusts this identity provider and it allows me to log into the Salesforce. Now again, if I go back to my Salesforce instance and the user detail, I must see that the user should have the another third-party account linked, which is the LinkedIn this time, because I am logged in using the LinkedIn account. And if I log out from the from my Salesforce, then I must see this LinkedIn ID SSO, or maybe the other options could be using the Google SSO. So this time again, if I click on this LinkedIn SSO, I must be able to log in without providing the credentials, because I have already provided the credentials and I'm already logged in into my browser. So this way you can enable your social sign-on for the internal as well as for the external users. And just to recap, you need to provide, or you need to create the auth provider first based on your provider type, whether this should be Google or LinkedIn or maybe other provider type, that could be Facebook or the Microsoft or Open Connect, or even you can go ahead for Salesforce to Salesforce integration or Twitter or Slack. And once you are done with the auth providers, you need to enable it under the my domain for the internal users. And if you go to the authentication configuration, you would be able to see all those auth providers under the authentication services. Or if it is at all related for the community, you need to go ahead for the sites, and in the administration section you will see the login and registration, and there you need to enable the other options. So if I refresh this page, I should be able to see the LinkedIn SSO as well this time. So if I will enable the LinkedIn SSO as well, so that means the external sites or the communities is also enabled for the LinkedIn SSO. And third thing is, whenever you are creating your SSO registration handler class, you need to make sure that you have implemented the interface, which is auth registration handler, and under that auth registration handler you must also implement two methods, which are create user and update user. The details about these methods and what is the code block written over here, you can find it under my blog, which you can get the URL in my description of this video section. So you can get all the coding details in my blog. So this way you can configure your Salesforce instance to have these social sign-on for external communities or the external users and for the internal users. Thank you very much for watching my video, and stay tuned for the further updates